Hello, welcome to my channel. So today we will be talking about how that some compounds which are covalent, they form ions. Okay, so let's get into the topic quickly. So to understand how this is happening, we need to understand one concept that is called as electronegativity. So I would be explaining you what is electronegativity. So as the term says electro and negativity, it basically implies that they are talking about something being negative. Okay. So now when you talk about when you see the periodic table, consider if I take two elements, like if I take chlorine and if I take bromine. So these are halogens of the same group. So if you talk about the ease of taking electrons, then when you compare both of them, the chlorine would be having more ease as compared to bromine. So when you talk about electronegativity is defined as the ease to take electrons towards itself. So the electronegativity is nothing but more ease to take electrons. So if I now differentiate between fluorine and chlorine, since fluorine is higher in the periodic table as compared to the chlorine, therefore if you differentiate between both of these molecules, of course fluorine would be more electronegative. So I will be just giving you one more example. So consider in the periodic table there is an element oxygen which is in group 6 and you have chlorine which is in group 7. Okay. So now if you talk about the electronegativity between both of these, the chlorine here would be more electronegative as compared to the oxygen. So when you talk about the trends of the electronegativity, it increases from left to right and decreases from top to bottom. So when you talk about the electronegativity, you could say that it increases from left to right and decreases from top to bottom. So I hope the concept for electronegativity was clear. Now we would be talking about what is happening in covalent molecules which makes them form into ions. Okay. So now we would be taking a molecule that is HCl. I would be drawing two electrons between them, showing that they form this covalent bond. So one electron is donated by hydrogen and one electron is given by chlorine and the rest 7 is here. Okay, so now what happens is that chlorine here is more electronegative as compared to hydrogen. So because of its electronegative property, as we know that electronegativity is a property in which you have more ease to take electrons. So in this molecule, instead of the bond being between hydrogen and chlorine equally shared, what happens that this electrons which are between hydrogen and chlorine, they more towards the chlorine. So now because of this, what happens, the chlorine which is there, it gains a negative charge and this would gain a positive charge. And then when you dissolve this molecule in water, they readily separate in the form of ions. So the covalent molecules which shows this charge, like there was an induction of a charger, like you could say this molecule chlorine, it got a negative charge because of the electron moving towards itself, and here it got a positive charge because there was no electrons present here. Therefore this type of covalent bonds where you see that one side of a molecule gets a positive and one gets a negative, they are called as polar molecules. So whatever polar molecules which you have, they readily form into ions easily. So this would be one example. I would be not going into the detail of what is polar molecules. So the covalent molecules which dissociate into ions into water are nothing but the covalent molecules. So one more example of a covalent molecule talking about is water. So same thing happens in the water. So you would be talking about the water molecules. The dot represents the electron of oxygen and the cross represents the electron of hydrogen. So what is happening here? Same thing, the oxygen here is highly electronegative, and because of it being negative, the electrons are moved towards the oxygen. So what would happen is, because the electrons moving towards it, uh, the oxygen which is here, it gains a negative charge, and this hydrogens which are here, they gain a positive charge, and therefore they separate in the form of H plus and OH minus. Alright, so this would be also an example. So all polar molecules, what do you see? They separate because of the electronegativity. Even when you talk about the ionic compounds, so I would be taking a very simple example. So when you talk about Na and Cl, so they readily form into ions. It's simply because, so the electronegativity of the sodium here is very less as compared to the chlorine. Therefore, it readily takes the electrons and separate in the form of ions. So the formation of ion depends upon the electronegativity of the specific element in the molecule. So I hope this video was helpful to you to understand why some covalent molecules dissociate into ions in water. So if you like my videos, please like and subscribe. Thank you.